Welcome to Drive the Daf, clear, structured explanation of the daily daf in 20 minutes. You can even follow in the car.
Taanis Daf Chav Ches continues working through the lengthy Mishnah at the beginning of the parak line by line. The beginning is discussing the Kriyas HaTorah on the Ma'amados, special fast days. The Gemara will explain some of the words of the Mishnah. The Gemara will then get into the specific days of the year in which certain families were allowed to bring wood for the Mizbeach and no one else was allowed to bring. They had the special privilege. The Gemara will explain how they got that privilege, what the story was. The Gemara will then get into the reasons for the names of some of the shifts of Kohanim. And the Gemara will discuss other names which are two names for the same shift, why they have the same shift. And towards the end of the daf, the Gemara will get into the 5 things which happened on Shavasar B'Tammuz, and the Gemara will give the source for a number of them. So let's begin the daf. The first line we're analyzing in the Mishnah is where we said that we read a parsha, we read laning on the day of the Maimid, by Shachris and by Musaf and by Mincha. They didn't lane in shul, they didn't lane in public, each individual said it on his own. So Gemara says, you mentioned Shachris, Musaf, and Mincha. Which one is referring to the first half of your sentence? Which one is referring to the second half of your sentence? You said, we lane in shul publicly by Shachris, but by Musaf and Mincha, it's read by each individual alone, or does Musaf belong together with Shachris? Do you say that we read in shul publicly by Shachris and by Musaf, but by Mincha, each individual reads his own? So the Gemara brings a brisa which resolves the question pretty clearly. The brisa says explicitly, by Shachris and by Musaf, they read it publicly in shul. By Mincha, an individual read it on his own. So Gemara interrupts. The Gemara says that Rabbi Yosi interrupts and says, how can an individual read on his own? The individual is not on lane from the Torah. So the Gemara explains what it means is that all the individuals came to shul and read quietly to themselves. They did not have a loud kriya like they had by Shachris and by Musaf. Okay, next the Gemara refers to the next line in the Mishnah, which says that the Karban Eitzim, the ceremony of bringing wood for the Mizbeach, was something which occupied the time, and that pushed away one of the Mamados services. There was some discussion in the Mishnah whether it pushed away the one from Ne'ilah or the one from Mincha. So Gemara says, why should it be Ne'ilah rather than Mincha? So Gemara says, because Mincha is a Tefillah D'Oraisa. It was instituted by Yitzchak Avinu, Rashi says, which is mentioned in the Torah, and therefore it's D'Oraisa. And Ne'ilah was just made by the Chachamim later, and therefore it does not have the Chashivas to push away and to block the Mamados service. Okay, next Gemara discusses the fact that there were certain families that had the privilege to bring wood to the Mizbeach for the Mizbeach use in certain times of the year. The Gemara wants to know how they got the privilege. The Gemara quotes a brisa that discusses the story. The Gemara says that when Klal Yisrael came up from Babel returning to Eretz Yisrael, there was not enough wood in the wood chamber in the Beis HaMikdash, and there were 9 families that got up and they said, we are going to give our own wood, we are going to donate right now on the spot. And the Nevi'im at the time established that even if the wood chamber would be full of wood on the specific days of the year, these 9 families will have the right to bring wood whenever, no matter how much wood is there, they'll have the right to bring on that day. So Gemara quotes a pasuk in Nehemiah which discusses specifically. It says, "V'hagarolos hipalnu al karbon ha'etzim." We drew lots on the karbon ha'etzim, v'kahanim ha'levim v'ha'am, for the kahanim, the Leviim, and the Yisraelim to bring lebeis Elokeinu, lebeis Aviseinu, to bring for the house of Hashem to the house of our fathers, le'idim uzumanim shana b'shana, on specific times per year, meaning they drew lots to determine which day would belong to which. Levar al mizbeach Hashem Elokeinu kakasav b'Torah, to burn on the mizbeach as it says in the Torah. These are psukim in Sefer Nehemiah describing this incident. Okay, the Gemara refers back to the Mishnah, and there we had seen that some of the shifts of Kohanim had interesting names. The Gemara is now going to describe how they got them. So one group was called B'nei Gonvei Eli, B'nei Kotei Ketzios, the people that smuggled the pestle, that's the tool used to grind things in a grinder, and the people who cut figs, who carry dried figs. So what's this referring to? So the Gemara describes a story that happened. The Gemara says there was a kingdom, there was a ruler over Eretz Yisrael that decreed that the Jewish people are not allowed to bring wood for the Mizbeach, and that they're not allowed to bring Bikurim, the midst of the first fruits, to Yerushalayim. Not only that, but this kingdom placed soldiers standing on the roads in order to catch people trying to bring wood or Bikurim to Yerushalayim, just like Yeravim ben Nevat had done in his days, where he wanted to block people from being Oler Regel, from going to Yerushalayim for the Shalosh Regalim. So, what did the tzaddikim of the generation do? Those who had fear of sin and wanted to make sure that there was Bikurim brought and that there was wood. So they brought large baskets. They filled the baskets with Bikurim or with wood, and they covered the top of the baskets with dried figs, so that it looked like a basket full of dried figs. They carried them on their shoulders together with the pestles. So they took the dried figs and the pestles, and here's where we have the name, the smugglers of the dried figs and the pestles. And they started walking to Yerushalayim. When it came to the guards, they said, "What are you doing?" They said, "We are taking these to grind them in a big grinder, using this basket of dried figs and this pestle that we're carrying here. That's what we're going to do." And they let them pass. When they got close to Yerushalayim, they took them off. They got rid of the pestle and the dried figs. Dried figs is not Bikurim. And they put crowns on the baskets with simcha, like they usually did when they brought Bikurim to Yerushalayim. Now the Gemara brings another brayso that says a very similar story happened with a family called Salmai Hanatufti. They did very similar things, very similar gzeira, except them, instead of carrying the dried figs with the pestle, they took the ladders. When they came to the guards, they said, "What are you doing?" So they said, "We are going to catch birds. We're going to take birds from the shovach, from the dovekot, with these ladders." And then they were able to pass, and they did the same thing. They brought the wood and the fruits from Bikurim to Yerushalayim. So on people like this, the brayso concludes, we say Zecher Tzadik Levracha. On people like Yeravim ben Nevat and his ilk, who stopped people from going to Yerushalayim, on them we say Shem Rishon Yirkav, may the name of the wicked rot. Alright, now the Gemara gets into more specifically the names of the families which were listed in the Mishnah. So there were a number of them were listed as being Ben Yehuda. So we had David ben Yehuda, we had Pchas Moav ben Yehuda, and we had Adin ben Yehuda. So David ben Yehuda refers to the king. That refers to David HaMelech, the family of David HaMelech. Who's Pchas Moav ben Yehuda and who's Adin ben Yehuda? So Rav Yossi says both of those refer to the family of Yoav ben Tzuya. Yoav ben Tzuya was a nephew of David HaMelech, also from Shevet Yehuda. Both of those refer to him. That's Rabbi Yossi's opinion. Now, Rabbi Meir and Rabbi Yehuda disagree. Rabbi Meir talks about Pchas Moav. He says that refers to David also. It's also referring to David. We had the family of David mentioned specifically. Pchas Moav was also referring to David for the simple reason that he was descended from Rus HaMoaviyah, and she was therefore from the Moavim, so it's called Pchas Moav. Rabbi Yossi says Bnei Adin. He talks about Bnei Adin ben Yehuda. Doesn't talk about Pchas Moav. Not Rabbi Yossi. That should be Rabbi Yehuda. Says that Bnei Adin refers to the children of David because they were Adin. They were soft in their Torah learning. And they were very hard when they fought a war. So therefore we have the following thing. We have the listing specifically of Bnei David ben Yehuda once. According to Rabbi Yossi, that's not repeated ever again. Those people are not referred to again. According to Rabbi Meir, when we say Pchas Moav, that's referring to the same people. And according to Rabbi Yossi, and according to Rabbi Yehuda, when we say Adin ben Yehuda, is referring to the same people. Now, Rabbi Yossi, though, does say that Adin and Pchas Moav are referring to the same people. They're referring to the children of Yoav ben Tzruya. So the Gemara is a kasha on all three. From a simple line, further along the Mishnah, it says that the Bnei Parosh went again. They had a second turn. So the Gemara's question is that according to all these, somebody else is going twice. So the Mishnah should say he went again. If another group gets to go twice, just like we said that Bnei Parush went twice, we should say that this group went twice. Why do we call them by a different name? So it doesn't fit not with Rabbi Yehuda, not with Rabbi Yossi, and not with Rabbi Meir. So Gemara says it's Rabbi Yossi. Rabbi Yossi held that neither of these refer to Bnei David, so there's no question of Bnei David going twice. And the kasha you have is that both Adin ben Yehuda and Pchasmo ben Yehuda are both referring to Bnei Tzeruya, to Bnei Yoav ben Tzeruya. So we should say that twice. So the Gemara answers, these two opinions of Rabbi Yossi are mutually exclusive. It's two different Tanaim, and they're arguing as to what Rabbi Yossi really said. One said he said that Pchasmo is referring to Yoav ben Tzeruya, and the other one said that Adin is referring to Yoav ben Tzeruya, but nobody held that they're referring to both. Not possible that both of them are Yoav ben Tzeruya, which each Tana holds that the other one is someone else, some unidentified family which we don't have. Therefore, no one is repeated twice, and it's not a kasha that the Mishnah doesn't say that they went back and they had another turn. Okay, moving along, the next thing we saw in our Mishnah is that on the first of Teves there was no Maimed at all. That's because the Maimed service is cancelled by Hallel, the Shachar service is cancelled by Hallel, Musaf cancels the Mincha service, and Karban Eitzim cancels the Ne'ilah service. And on the first of Teves you had all those things, because Teves was Chanukah, so there was Hallel and there was Musaf. There was Chanukah because there was Hallel because it was Chanukah, and there was Musaf because it's Rosh Chodesh. And therefore you didn't have any. So the Gemara says that the kasha was asked by Rav Chizda, by Mar Shisha, the son of Rav Chizda, to Rav Ashi. The kasha was, we see that Hallel, which is part of Shachris, pushes away the Maimed service of Shachris. But Musaf only pushes away the Maimed service of Mincha. Why doesn't it push away the Maimed service of Musaf, just like the Hallel, which is part of Shachris, pushes away the Maimed service of Shachris? So Rav Ashi said, of course it does. It pushes away Mincha, and certainly if it pushes away Mincha, which is not its own tefillah, it certainly pushes away the Maimed service of Musaf itself. That for sure does. So Gemara says, that's for sure, that wasn't the kasha. The kasha was, not that it should push away Musaf. I know it pushes away Musaf. The kasha was it should push away only Musaf. Just like Hallel pushes away the Maimed service of Shachris only, Musaf should push away the Maimed service of Musaf only. It should not push away Mincha. What does that have to do with Mincha? Rav Ashi answered, there is such an opinion. That's the opinion of Rav Yossi. We see in a different brisa says that even on a day when you have Musaf, there is a Maimed service. What Maimed service is he referring to? Can't be referring to Shachris. There's definitely no Maimed of Shachris because there's a Hallel. Can't be referring to Musaf because it certainly has to push away its own, like we've said. Everybody holds that it takes precedence over its own Maimed. It can't be referring to Mincha because there's a Karban Eitim by Mincha. It's got to be referring to Ne'ilah. So you see that there is one particular service that does not get pushed away by the presence of Musaf on that day itself. Another one wants to know, why is it that if you're looking for an example of a day in which there's no Maimed because there's Hallel, Musaf, and Karban Eitzim, why do you go to Rosh Chodesh Teves? Go to Rosh Chodesh Nisan. Rosh Chodesh Nisan is one of the days in which wood was brought. So use that day. It also has Hallel, Musaf, and Karban Eitzim. It has Karban Eitzim because it's one of the days in which wood was brought. It has Hallel and Musaf because it's Rosh Chodesh. Where it says this comes to tell you that Hallel will not push away the Maimed of Shachris because that Hallel is only Hallel D'Rabbanan. Only Hallel, which is D'Oraisa, pushes it away. Now, Chanukah is not a D'Oraisa, obviously, but its Hallel is a full-fledged Hallel. It's a Hallel Hashalim, we say the entire Hallel, and therefore it counts as a fuller Hallel, and that could push away the Maimed of Shachris. So now the Gemara goes into when we say a full Hallel. Which times of the year do we say a full Hallel? So there's obviously a difference between whether you're in Eretz Yisrael where you keep one day Yom Tov or you're in Chutz La'aretz and you keep 2 days Yom Tov. So Gemara brings a brisa. Rabbi Yochanan says the name of Rabbi Shimon ben Yotzadok. 18 days of the year in Eretz Yisrael where you complete Hallel. These are the 7 days of Sukkot together with Shmini Atzeres is 8. 8 days of Chanukah takes us to 16. And the first day of Pesach and Shavuos. The rest of Pesach, you do not say the entire Hallel, you only say part Hallel because it had the same Karbanos as the first day. It's not considered to be a new Yom Tov. Now, outside of Eretz Yisrael, you'll have 3 more days for a total of 21. You'll have the second day of Shmini Atzeres, you'll have the second day of the first days of Pesach, and you'll have the second day of Shavuos. And it adds to the other 18 that we had before. So now the Gemara notes that Rav went up to Bavel and he saw that they were saying Hallel on Rosh Chodesh, and he wanted to stop them. He wanted to say Rosh Chodesh, we don't say full Hallel. Like we just got finished saying earlier, we don't say full Hallel. When he saw that they were skipping 2 of the paragraphs of Hallel, he said, oh, this is not an attempt to say a real Hallel D'Oraisa. This is just a minig avasayim b'yedehim. We're quotes a brisa that says that an individual alone should not start saying Hallel, but if he does say Hallel, then he should complete the entire Hallel. Right now the Gemara moves on to discuss the 5 things that happened on Asar B'Tammuz. We had seen them listed in our Mishnah. The Gemara wants to know what the source is. So first of all, we said first thing is that the luchos, the first set of luchos which came down from Shemayim, which were brought down by Moshe Rabbeinu from Shemayim at the time of the Egel, and he broke them on Shiva Asar B'Tammuz. The Gemara wants to know, how do you know that that's the day? The Gemara says that although there's a machlokes what day Matan Torah was, according to Rabbi Yossi, it was on the 7th of Sivan. According to the Tanna Kama, it was on the 6th of Sivan. Both of them agree that Moshe went up to Shemayim through Har Sinai on the 7th of Sivan. That it says explicitly in the pasuk Vayikra El Moshe B'Yom HaShvi, and it says V'yavo Moshe B'Zoch HaOnan V'yalo HaHar. So he definitely went up on the 7th day of the month. So then he was there from the 7th, and he was there for 40 days and nights. So that leaves 24 days of the month of Sivan, and a remaining 16 days of the month of Tammuz, which takes us to the day that he came down, was the 17th of the month of Tammuz, which is Shiva Asar B'Tammuz. When he came down, he saw, as it's described, Vayigash Shekar V'lamachna V'yaras Ha'egel V'yashach Miyadav V'saluchas V'yashabra Oisam Tachas Ahar, came down the mountain and came close to the camp, and he saw the golden calf, and he threw the luchos from his hand and broke them at the foot of the mountain. So that happened on the 17th of Tammuz. Now, next thing we saw is that the Karban Tamid stopped being brought in the first Beis HaMikdash. That we have through tradition. Third thing on the list was that the city of Yerushalayim's walls were broken into. The Gemara says, are you sure that took place on Shiva Asar B'Tammuz? We have a pasuk that says pretty clearly in Sefer Yirmiyah that it happened on the 9th of Tammuz. It says, B'chodesh Ha'revi b'tish shel chodesh v'yachazak harav be'ir v'tibaka ha'ir. So it happened on the 9th day of the 4th month, which is the 9th of Tammuz, not the 17th. Where it says the 9th was in Bais Rishon, the first Beis HaMikdash was being destroyed, the city was broken on the 9th, and in the instruction of the second Beis HaMikdash, the city was broken into on the 17th. Fourth on the list was that Apostamus burnt a Sefer Torah, that we have through tradition. And the fifth thing was that a statue was placed in the Heichal. How do you know that? Tumar again quotes Psukim. Here we have a pasuk from Sefer Daniel, who says, from the time that the Tamid stopped being brought, that was when a disgusting thing was placed in the Beis HaMikdash. That disgusting thing was referring to an idol. So the question is, why is it listed as one disgusting thing? We have another pasuk in Daniel that seems to say that there were multiple of them. It says, Al Knaf Shikutzim Mishomim, plural. So Rava says that there originally were 2 that were placed, but one fell and it landed on the other one and broke off its hand, and therefore they removed the broken one. And it's a fulfillment of the pasuk that we've seen that says, Ad tzavis lachruve beisa yadach hashlimusa. You wanted to destroy the house, but your hand was paid for it. Meaning that the idol, Kilu, referring to the Averos, we're going to destroy the Beis HaMikdash, but the idol had its hand broken in recompense.
Drive the Daf is a project of the Grand Woodlands Shul and is presented by Rabbi Yitzchak Landa. Find us on YouTube or subscribe to daily emails by emailing drivethedaf@gmail.com.